young and old walking down the road of reconciliation. The day fosters national unity and was adopted after the dawn of democracy from what was previously known as the Day of the Vow. A church service before the day's activities, in celebration of the monument's cornerstone, which is 80 years old today.
Well, it means quite a lot to me. It means what our forefathers did for us, why we're here today, and what we can do to move forward.
Well, we've been here 5 years ago and we sort of just decided to come. It's a good thing to visit it now and then, to see some culture.
Rounding up the proceedings.
This year marked the 80th anniversary of the laying of the cornerstone of the building behind me, which was quite a watershed in the history of the Afrikaner. It was also known as the era of Afrikaner nationalism and so on, seen in the context of the 1930s.
The cornerstone was laid on the 16th of December 1938, together with a copy of Jan van Riebeck's diary, the treaty between Piet Retief and Dingaan, and a copy of the vow of 16th of December 1838.
Right, for more on Reconciliation Day, I'm joined by the head of media at the South African Institute of Race Relations, Michael Morris. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. What's the state of reconciliation in South Africa today?
Our polling actually over the years consistently shows that most South Africans are in fact committed to the post 1994 project of creating a better country, and that an overwhelming majority are in fact moderate and respectful and collaborative in their opinions, and believe that all communities need one another for the country to succeed, and to create a better future in which all people have equal rights. So on the whole, we believe the social fabric of South Africa is sound and in good hands, the people of South Africa.
Talk to us about how widely you poll in the different areas that you go to and how you compile the reports that you do.
Well, the various polls that we've done over the years are not done by ourselves, but by credible research companies. They're representative in every sense. And it's always a random sample, and very scientifically conducted. So we certainly have a high degree of confidence in the results, and we have been doing it for some time. And there is a consistency in the patterns of sentiments that emerge from the polls.
Mm-hmm. Your latest report is called Life in South Africa, Reasons for Hope. It's quite optimistic about the state of race relations and reconciliation, but the headlines we read constantly and the cases that we're seeing in court where people are using the K word or racially abusing and even murdering people due to race would beg to differ.
Well, yes, there always are exceptions, and I think every society is plagued by a degree of racism. It's a human flaw, which regrettably afflicts all societies. But as you indicate, our polling does show that most people, in fact, I think 63% of black people in our latest poll in 2017 believe that racism was not a major concern. And that the other factors in society are much more important to them. And in fact, we believe much more important to influencing the sentiments of society, the frustrations or the anger. And those are jobs and economic prospects and hope for the future in that sense. Mm-hmm. People wanting a stake and finding it difficult to achieve a stake in society. But
yes.
I beg your pardon, Sharon.
Sorry, I was interrupting you. I was saying that the issues of inequality that you mentioned, of jobs that you mentioned, are very much tied into race in a country like South Africa, which emerged from apartheid about 25 years ago. So how do we balance that then and say that race perhaps isn't the strongest issue in South Africa?
Well, it's the economic conditions obviously afflict everybody, but one of our biggest concerns, in fact, is the failure of empowerment policy over almost a quarter of a century now to reach nearly deeply enough into the poorest communities. Our feeling is that largely because the policy focuses primarily on race rather than disadvantage, what we are failing to do is to actually tackle the disadvantage. and there is a huge deficit there that does need to be addressed. We have in fact crafted an alternative empowerment policy. We call it economic empowerment for the disadvantaged, and it doesn't refer to race at all, but focuses purely on disadvantage. And of course, because of the legacy of apartheid being what it is, the primary beneficiaries of that focus will in fact be black South Africans. But it takes the divisive element out of it, and it focuses keenly on where the real problem is. Black people are not poor because they're black, it's because they're disadvantaged, and that's what needs to be confronted.
So President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking today at a Reconciliation Day event in the Eastern Cape, speaking about the issue of land and how it shouldn't be used to polarize people, but it seems as though that's also an issue that's going to polarize people even further and perhaps derail a little bit the reconciliation project.
We in fact, I mean, in terms of sentiment, and he did dwell at great length on land reform. We've been extremely critical of the current drift towards what we think of as an ill-defined land reform process based on expropriation without compensation. And we absolutely agree that land reform is necessary and urgent, almost more in cities than in the countryside. But we're convinced that it can only achieve good things if property rights are placed front and center, because it is precisely property rights that will give people the real stake that they crave, both in the country and in the economy. But if you erode property rights, the very great risk is that you deny people those opportunities, you scare away investors, joblessness will rise, and farmers who would be the in a sense the smaller beneficiaries of a sound land reform system would then be denied the opportunity to gain collateral on which all farming depends. So we're very worried about the process, which is ill-defined, but we agree that land reform is important.
The head of media at South African Institute of Race Relations, Michael Morris, thanks so much for your time on SABC News. It's time for a short break. I have more news for you on The Full View. Do stay with us.
Buildings, submerged homes and devastated families.
Biggest earthquake in here.
Their homes and buildings moved like boats.
Big shake, and I ran as fast as I can.
These are the satellite images depicting the area before the disaster.
The ground is like a wave.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
It is unbelievable. You can actually smell the stench of dead bodies around.
The National Hurricane Center said earlier on Tuesday that Michael was a Category 1 storm with sustained winds of up to 150 kilometers per hour. Residents were implored to get out of harm's way ahead of life-threatening waves, winds and rains. Flash flooding over the weekend caused 13 deaths in Central America after Michael formed off the coast of northern Honduras.
We are at the forefront of Africa's tech discussion.
We're already planning for the 5G spectrum.